cases of its kind in U.S. history. As described in the 145-page indictment and the 135-page criminal complaint, which was unsealed this morning, BEC scammers used hacked email accounts to convince businesses or individuals to make payments that were either completely bogus or that should have been otherwise paid to legitimate companies. BEC scams, which include escrow scams, where hackers convince real estate purchasers to send down payments to bank accounts that they control, are having a significant economic toll on businesses across the country and ruin the lives of individuals. Romance scams prey on those seeking friendships and relationships, often duping the victims to make repeated and ever-escalating payments to the fraudsters they come to trust. In some cases, the victims in this case thought they were communicating with U.S. servicemen stationed overseas, when in fact they were emailing with con men. Some of the victims in this case lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in this way. And some of the victims of the romance scams and other online frauds were targeted specifically because they were elderly or otherwise vulnerable. In a few minutes, Assistant Director Delacourt will discuss these schemes and how to protect yourselves from online predators. I'll focus on the indictment that led to the arrests this morning. The indictment alleges 252 counts, some of which deal with specific fraud schemes that targeted businesses, others that targeted individuals on dating and social media platforms, and others that targeted the elderly. The common thread is that all of these schemes involve the internet to defraud victims. The indictment makes very specific allegations against these con artists, many of whom are based in Nigeria, intent on stealing money from victims. But just as important, the indictment also focuses on those responsible for enabling these fraud schemes. At the center of the indictment are operatives here in Los Angeles who facilitated the fraud schemes by opening U.S. bank accounts where victims were directed to deposit their money. And then these Los Angeles-based defendants laundered the stolen funds, delivering them to the scammers in Nigeria. The indictment and the criminal complaint expose in painstaking detail the techniques used by the scammers and their money men to fleece their victims, funnel funds through U.S. bank accounts, and pocket the proceeds. This case is a testament to the hard work and diligence of American law enforcement. The FBI agents involved in this investigation tracked down these scammers around the world. They identified dozens of victims from around the United States and from countries around the globe. Victims in Colombia, China, the Caribbean, Germany, Japan, Mexico, the United Arab Emirates, and the United Kingdom. The agents tracked down details of thousands of communications and thousands of financial transactions that were used to expose this far-flung conspiracy. The indictment outlined schemes against more than 30 victims, about half of which are businesses and law firms, mainly operating in the U.S. There are more than 10 individual victims, including 8 who are older Americans who were targeted in romance scams and other get-rich-quick schemes. These schemes were part of a larger conspiracy in which some of the conspirators directly solicited the victims, while others coordinated and participated in laundering the stolen funds. The indictment alleges that the LA-based group of money launderers received at least $6 million in stolen money, and the overall conspiracy attempted to steal another $40 million. The 2 lead defendants charged in the indictment orchestrated the money laundering scheme for numerous fraudsters. These money launderers had access to fraudulent bank accounts, some of which had been opened by so-called money mules. In some cases, they would establish a new account for a specific scheme targeting a particular company. The money launderers routinely went as far as registering fictitious business names with LA County so they could open bank accounts in the fictitious business names to receive money from their schemes. Once the scammers convinced their victims to transfer money to one of the fraudulent bank accounts, the money was sometimes quickly withdrawn in cash or in cashier's checks. In other cases, the money was quickly transferred to other bank accounts controlled by members of the conspiracy, who then attempted to withdraw the funds. Ultimately, These money launderers used illicit money exchangers to transfer other funds from their Nigerian bank accounts to Nigerian bank accounts directed by the money launderers. The money exchangers sent millions of dollars to Nigeria simply by using smartphone banking applications for Nigerian banks to transfer the funds. All the defendants named in the indictment are charged in a conspiracy to defraud and a conspiracy to commit money laundering. All the defendants are also charged with aggravated identity theft, and many of the defendants face substantive fraud and money laundering counts. If convicted, all of the defendants face potential decades in federal prison. This case is part of our ongoing efforts to protect Americans from fraudulent schemes and to bring to justice those who prey on Americans and American businesses. My office recently became part of the Justice Department's Transnational Elder Fraud Strike Force. As one of only 6 U.S. Attorney's offices participating in the strike force, we are expanding our efforts to investigate foreign-based fraud schemes that target American seniors through telemarketing and other scams. While the investigation that led to today's arrest started before the establishment of the task force, it clearly demonstrates our commitment to protecting older Americans, indeed protecting all Americans, from financial exploitation. With additional resources coming into the area as a result of the strike force, I expect to bring more and more cases of this type. Thank you very much. At this time, I would like to introduce Assistant Director in Charge, Paul Delacourt.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Paul Delacourt. I'm the Assistant Director in Charge of the FBI's Los Angeles Field Office. As part of the 252-count indictment described by the U.S. Attorney, FBI agents arrested 11 federal defendants in Los Angeles and another 3 around the country today. In total, some 80 defendants were charged, including many internationally. In the days ahead, we will be working with our foreign counterparts in 9 countries to apprehend 57 additional defendants. A majority of the local arrests were made early this morning, but 1 additional defendant was arrested on Sunday as he attempted to leave the country, and another was arrested last night. 2 were previously in custody on other unrelated charges. 3 subjects have also been arrested on state charges, and Deputy District Attorney Warren Cato will describe those shortly. We're looking for 2 fugitives here in Los Angeles and another 4 nationally, and we'll have that information available for you at the end of the press conference. Now, this investigation began in 2016 with a single bank account used to receive funds stolen through a business email compromise scheme. The case evolved into a complex, sophisticated, extensive conspiracy involving various types of cyber fraud through business email compromise, known most often as BEC, through traditional romance schemes that have migrated online and included the laundering of the proceeds of those frauds. Losses in this case were approximately $10 million, and attempted thefts were approximately $40 million. This case involved 32 confirmed victims. Victims were located in the United States, as well as in Japan, the UK, Lebanon, Ukraine, China, Mexico, Germany, Indonesia, UAE, and Trinidad and Tobago. This shows the extensive reach of the cyber criminals involved in these types of schemes. And while we're here to announce the results of this investigation, I'd like to describe the impact these fraud schemes are increasingly having on Americans here and around the country. Business email compromise frauds are being carried out by foreign criminal enterprises targeting businesses and individuals. Businesses which regularly perform wire transfer payments are targeted when their emails are compromised. The scammers employ social engineering tactics, spoof websites, or conduct computer intrusions to fraudulently transfer funds. Companies large and small are victimized. The criminals conduct research to learn about the employees in a company who manage the money, as well as the protocols necessary to perform wire transfers in the particular business environment. A secondary scheme associated with the BEC affects victims of romance schemes. These victims are used primarily as money mules by allowing their bank accounts to be used to transfer stolen funds. They may not realize that they are opening business accounts for fake corporations in their own names, and that they may become complicit in the illicit transfer of stolen money. Law enforcement agencies have received complaints from victims in every one of the 50 states and scores of foreign countries. To give you an example of just how fast this crime is growing, I'd like to give you some numbers. In the first 7 months of this year, the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center received nearly 14,000 complaints from victims, reporting BEC incidents with a total loss of more than $1.1 billion. That matches nearly the entire losses reported for all of 2018. Over 1,000 of those victims come from the Los Angeles area here in Southern California, with losses totaling more than $73 million. Another indicator of just how fast this crime is growing, I can give you some year over year to date numbers, which reflect a 33% increase in the number of BEC complaints received from victims across the country, accounting for a 71% increase in losses per victim reported by business email compromises, and representing a 183% increase in total losses attributed to all BEC financial victims. As you can see, we're inundated with complaints while a growing number of businesses and individuals are seeing their money leave overseas. And while we have had some success working with banks to stop wire payments, a large majority of these victims do not get their money back, ever. We've done other news stories, other public service advisories, and have conducted outreach to businesses and the banking communities, but this crime is growing exponentially in terms of losses and victims. The romance scams prey on vulnerable populations, but the BEC victims are often reputable companies and conscientious employees who have been fooled by sophisticated cyber frauds into transferring money. And while we are happy to announce these charges today, we are not going to arrest our way out of this problem. And so we continue to educate potential victims. In closing, I'd like to offer some important tips, but I've also brought with me a couple of experts who can answer technical questions about how the frauds are perpetrated. First, businesses must employ precautions. Employees handling monetary transactions are being targeted. Be cautious of requests for urgency, mimicked email addresses, and practice multi-level authentication of monetary transfers. Above all, simply pick up the phone and verify legitimate business partners and authorizations. Individuals who are targeted in romance scams and other scams should never send money to someone they don't know, have not met, and have no reason to trust. Nor should they provide personal or bank account information. These requests are hallmarks of scams that will lead to financial loss, perhaps financial ruin. I urge you to please consider, please caution your vulnerable friends and family members. Contact your bank immediately. Once a business or individual realizes they've been compromised, they need to act quickly to contact their bank to stop any transfers and then contact law enforcement. It's important at this point for me to thank the banking community for their attempts to interdict these transfers before they occur. Also, although it's not part of this investigation, ransomware has become a growing and insidious problem. Ransomware victimizes businesses, law firms, hospitals, municipal governments. Be aware, harden systems, take precautions. Victimization for any of these scams should be reported to the FBI's Internet Crimes Complaint Center. That's IC3, IC, and the number 3.gov, even if you did not lose money. We use this information to open and develop cases and to aggregate losses. More information is also available at fbi.gov. And while the main investigative partners are represented at the podium, many other agencies assisted us throughout this investigation and during today's operation, including the U.S. Department of State, the Osnabrück Public Prosecutor's Office in Germany, the National Crime Agency in the UK, U.S. Postal Inspection Service, HSI, the U.S. Marshals, and CBP, as well as the Ventura County District Attorney's Office. And now I'd like to introduce LA County Deputy District Attorney Warren Cato. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Delacourt. My name is Warren Cato, and I'm a Deputy District Attorney with the LA County's Community Cyber Investigation Response Team. I'm also a member of the task force that was responsible for the takedown today. It's an FBI-led task force, and I'm the prosecutor assigned to that task force to coordinate the state court prosecutions that arrive outside of that task force. I want to first, on behalf of the LA County District Attorney's Office, commend the fine work by the U.S. Attorney's Office, commend the fine work done by the FBI, and especially these two gentlemen behind me, Assistant U.S. Attorney Anil Anthony and Assistant U.S. Attorney Woodring, who are the prosecutors on the federal side on this case. The investigation in this case was significant for a number of reasons. I think the most significant thing is obviously it took down one of the most prolific BEC operations operating in the United States today. It's also been very significant for us at the District Attorney's Office because as a result of this investigation, which has been going on for quite some time, we were able to generate, in conjunction with the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI, 3 state cases that we filed in which we secured convictions on all 3 of those money mules, and the sentences are ranging between 3 to 10 years. They're now serving those sentences in state prison. We expect to have many more filing as a result of the investigation today, and the Deputy District Attorneys who will be handling that are Deputy District Attorney Michael Fern and Deputy District Attorney Ryan Tracy. I've been asked to talk a little bit about the task force that was involved in the takedown today. It's a BEC task force. I think it's formally called the Tech Task Force now. It was originally the brainchild of a supervisory special agent for the FBI named Michael Song. And Mike Song had this vision back in 2016 of forming a task force that involved collaboration with the U.S. Attorney's Office, the DA's office, the FBI, and all of the different state and local law enforcement agencies in the L.A. area, combined with collaboration with the banking industry and some cybersecurity firms, as well as intelligence gathering firms. And now it all came together back in 2016. And I think that the success of the operation today is a testament to the wisdom that he had in that vision. So I want to give a special shout out to Mr. Mike Song for putting that together. I want to also give some kudos to some state agencies that have been involved in the investigation at this point. Several investigators for the LA County District Attorney's Office, the Orange County District Attorney's Office, Ventura County District Attorney's Office, the California Franchise Tax Board, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and the San Bernardino Police Department have all been instrumental at various points in this investigation to the success of this operation, as well as the success that we had in our state cases. Just wanted to spend a minute on what we do at the BEC Task Force. As Director Delacourt stated, BEC losses have increased incrementally over the years, and we believe that the only way to effectively combat it is to educate the public. So a significant part of the time that we spend on the task force, and frankly individually, both with the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Sheriff's Department, the DA's office, and the FBI, both individually and collectively, has been educating the public. And we've been doing that on a day-in, day-out basis. We also do a lot of training for various law enforcement agencies and prosecutorial agencies. And by doing all of that collectively, we hope to really put a dent in the BEC problem that we have here in Los Angeles. So I just want to close once again, congratulate the U.S. Attorney's Office, the FBI on the success of this operation, and just reaffirm the commitment of the LA County District Attorney's Office in working with all of you guys to continue to fight BEC and bring justice for our victims. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Warren. As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, we in law enforcement here, federal, state, and local, work as a team. We had a number of matters recently, and we all work together, and this is one of those examples. So at this time, I'm happy to take any questions that anyone might have. Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to know what exactly tipped you off? What began this when you mentioned the beginning, the single bank account? What was it that made the FBI go into that?
Great. I think I'll defer to the FBI on that.
The investigation began with the use of a single bank account, the victimization of one particular individual. And when that came to our attention, we began to develop the investigation, which turned out to make this a very extensive criminal conspiracy case, which involved a variety of frauds. But it began from a single victim.
if I'm understanding correctly, when it comes to the romance fleet, it works in two ways. One is they just try to get money out of them, but secondarily, they're trying to get them to open accounts to launder the money as well. Is that correct?
That is correct. The romance scams do function, repeat the question, in two ways, trying to get the victim to transfer money to establish accounts or to open accounts or create businesses on behalf of the cyber criminals. That's what we looked at in large measure in this investigation, where some of the romance scams were created victims who became witting or unwitting money mules to transfer illicit funds stolen through a variety of fraud schemes.
So are any of the victims part of this indictment? Or you talked about the idea that they became unwitting or maybe witting victims by opening up those accounts through which the money was gone?
The money mules, where there's evidence to show that the money mules were as part of the complex conspiracy, those money mules will be charged with the money laundering counts, but individual victims, of course, are not charged with any crimes in this indictment.
And are they kind of broadly described as wealthy seniors, those individuals?
These scams target a variety of vulnerable populations. It might be church communities, it might be elder fraud, it might be individuals likely to fall for romance scams. We refer to them more broadly as vulnerable populations, which is why when we put out our public service announcements, we ask folks in the Los Angeles area to make sure that they are looking out not only for themselves, but for their vulnerable friends and family members, community members, and neighbors.
Can I just add on that? If you take a look at the criminal complaint, for example, there's examples in there of individuals. There's an example, for example, of a woman who's a widow, recent widow, who did not have a lot of money, who borrowed money from friends and family in order to make the payments. She was getting up to 15 emails a day from these individuals who would take on different personas, as if they were different friends of the person she was thought she was dating online, who would be asking her to do things. And so at the end of it, she's effectively bankrupt, owed her friends and family money. So it's not really folks that just have a lot of money to spare. It's people that are being bilked of their life savings and their family and friends' life savings.
And what are they telling these victims that are getting them to send them money?
There are examples. I don't want to get outside the four corners of the complaint, but there are examples in the complaint specifically of the type of allegations that are made and claims that are made. Essentially, they'll say anything they can to get money out of individuals. Sometimes it's I need the money for a particular purpose. Sometimes it's, I've uncovered a bag of diamonds in this foreign country. I need to get it out of the country. I need your help. It's any scam that they think will work to get money from the victims.
And those romance scams come full circle and connect that to the BECs.
No, the BECs are the fraudsters will employ any type of fraud to get money out of the victims. The BECs are a particular type of scam which targets businesses, typically goes after those individuals who would send out wire transfers from a legitimate business, intercept emails, and direct them to send wire transfers to supply vendors, for example, to a fraudulent bank account that has a very similar name, for example, of their normal vendor, to send money there, and then they get the money out.
Separate those two.
Yes, the romance scams are a separate type of scheme. Yes, ma'am. There are examples in the complaint in which the con men pretended to be servicemen, U.S. servicemen, for example, a doctor, a U.S. serviceman serving as a doctor overseas, who I think in that case was also claimed to be a widower. And there were other examples where they pretended to be U.S. servicemen overseas.
Are you talking about emails for romance scams?
Emails, yes.
And for BEC, you mentioned that a lot of victims are never in medically law. Is that include the businesses even though it's both their own and the website changes?
Yeah, once the money goes from once a legitimate business is tricked into wiring money into a bank account, the fraudsters try to get the money out of that bank account as quickly as they can, whether they either withdraw it in cash or cashier's check or they transfer it to another bank account. So once it goes, it becomes very hard to stop it, and it eventually ends up in bank accounts in Nigeria.
So even if this indictment does not contain recoup loss for any people,
Some of the money that was involved, the banks were able to stop the transfers, and so for those victims, that money didn't leave the country. But others where the money left the country, it's going to be very difficult to recoup.
And so the vast majority of these scams types.
I'm not sure about half. About half.
is the Nigerian government cooperating expedition?
Extradition, we do have we have been successful in extraditing Nigerian citizens in the past, and we're going to make every effort in this case to extradite the defendants who we believe are in Nigeria now.
Are there any arraignments expected today?
I think we'll have initial appearances this afternoon. This morning at 11. Anything else?
Can we get some Spanish?
Yeah, we'll have that.
What if you know what a trace work they're doing on the back end with large sums of money of the funding militias or terrorist activity or anything like that? What's going on with large sums of money?
Yeah, I can't speak to anything outside the current indictment and the criminal complaint. Sorry. Okay.
All right, let's wrap up this phase, and we'll tell them when they're ready.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll do the Spanish language part, and then if anybody wants a walkthrough of the scripted charts over here, we'll do it after the Spanish. It'll only take a couple of minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Agent Luna, I'm here front and center, sir.
Hey, Tom.
Yes.
If anyone's going to want,
All
I just want to, okay, so after Spanish.
Let's do Spanish real quick, and then
Okay,
we'll do
it'll be
one-on-ones
my
over
turn,
here.
so, yeah, you're fine.
Just give us a couple minutes to do that. All righty.
Rather good.
That's one question, like,
It's for me or him?